this morning as our worship team gets ready to step off, and I know with anticipation you guys have been looking forward to this opportunity just as much as, if maybe even more than Samuel and I. But we look forward to this presentation that we're about to make. I'm hoping that audio visual wise it'll work out for us today. As is typical, everything works great when you're doing this at your house, and then when you bring it here it just all seems to fall apart. Just seems to be typical. But this morning, if we can get it to work, do you think it's going to work? It's okay. We have a very special, and unbeknownst to Samuel, we have a very special presentation all the way from Africa this morning. So this was one way that didn't work. So, okay. I'm going to stall while the audio technical person tries to work this out. But anyway, I'm probably going to be saying this on behalf... Oh, there it is. There we go. Let's do this.
It's all good. Do we have sound?
There should be sound, I hope.
Good morning.
Yes.
Cornerstone Community Church of my name is Sean Batty.
Hang on, Ashley. Pause it and back it up just a little bit here, if you don't mind, while I come in here and do my part to tweak this. All right, start it over again, babe.
Good morning, Cornerstone Community Church of the Nazarene. My name is Sean Batty, Associate Chaplain at African Nazarene University, but I also work with the NYI in our region in Africa. Wow, what a blessing, an opportunity, a good opportunity to take this time and bring greetings to you. I greet you from Kenya, Nairobi, ANU specifically. The place that you have invested in, the place that you have committed yourself that you'd make a difference and make it a better place. Thank you so much. Thank you very much for blessing us, for being a blessing to us, for remembering us, for walking with us, for providing for us. We are so grateful that God has been using you to be a blessing to us. And you will never forget this. I'm so grateful. And God be with you. God bless you in whatever you do, even in trying times like the ones we are in. We continue to pray for you. ANU remembers you. ANU continues to pray for you. And specifically, I want to say thank you to Pastor Ron. Thank you very much for bringing a team to us. And thank you for being a father and for allowing me to be your son and to be a brother to Sam. Sam, I love you, bro. You will always be in my heart. I'll remember you and I'll continue praying for you and your family. And so I pray that God will give us another opportunity that we may meet and talk, eat together, have fun together, and just spend time together and making jokes. So we really love you, and God bless you. I love you all. See you.
So are you going to be able to say anything now?
No joke. So.
Well, as you noticed, he made the comment that is my son. I didn't know he was my son until we went to Africa. But after spending 2 weeks there was no doubt. I called Roxy and I said, well, I'm about to adopt a 34-year-old baby. I hope you don't mind. Wow. Okay. Just so that this goes out over the video, I'm going to repeat what was just said by Drew.
Yep.
For those of you that didn't hear it. Huh? You can't get it off? Okay. Anyway, what he said was, now Sean is my favorite son. So, we'll let Samuel go back and So, okay. Well, while they are trying to figure that out, I do want to, though, to read a portion of Scripture that I believe is very fitting and appropriate for what Samuel and I participated in back in February. I know I can speak on my behalf. I'll allow Samuel the opportunity to share as well, but we do want to say thank you as a church family for your financial support, your prayer, your physical support throughout this endeavor, giving us the opportunity to be able to go, those who filled in the pulpit, and all of those things that transpired to make it happen. It was an invaluable opportunity for us, and we just praise and thank the Lord for the opportunity that we had. But I was reminded as we were preparing for this trip of a portion of Scripture that is found in Isaiah. And in Isaiah chapter 6 is better known, at least through most commentaries, as Isaiah's commission. And in Isaiah chapter 6, in the first 8 verses, we read these words, that in the year that King Ezra died, I saw the Lord high and exalted, seated on a throne, and the train of his robe filled the temple. Above him were seraphims, each with 6 wings. With 2 wings they covered their faces, with 2 they covered their feet, and with 2 they were flying. And they were calling to one another, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord Almighty. The whole earth is full of His glory. And at the sound of their voices, the doorposts and the threshold shook, and the temple was filled with smoke. Woe to me, I cried. I am ruined, for I am a man of unclean lips. I live among a people of unclean lips, and my eyes have seen the King, the Lord Almighty. Then one of the seraphim flew to me, with a live coal in his hand, which he had taken with tongs from the altar. And with it he touched my mouth and said, See, this has touched your lips. Your guilt is taken away, and your sin atoned for. Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, Whom shall I send? And who will go for us? And I said, Here I am, send me. Powerful words. Powerful words by Isaiah, reminding us that God has sent each and every one of us. Most of the time, we don't get the opportunity to be able to go overseas to Africa or some other country like that. Most of the time, it's just across the street. Most of the time, it's like just next door. Most of the time, it's just to the grocery store or the gas station. Or Lord forbid if you have to go to Walmart, even there. I know a lot of us have to pray up a lot before we go to Walmart, don't we? But anyway. Sorry. God has sent us. And it doesn't have to be some great big, but let me tell you, it had been several years since I had had the opportunity to go on a mission trip. And it's a life-changing experience. In fact, by the time I got back, I was trying to figure out how we could get more of our church people involved in going someplace, especially like to a third world situation. Do you realize we can do that right in the United States? We don't have to go across the border to do so. But you know, COVID has kind of slowed that thought process down, but it's still on my heart. Still have a passion for it. Because it's a life-changing experience to be able to get outside of the norm. So this morning, Samuel and I are wanting to present to you our Africa mission trip to Nairobi, Kenya. We were gone for a little over 2 weeks, but we really enjoyed the opportunity to be gone. It kind of began with this particular situation. Well, as you can tell, we're kind of excited about going. For those of you that haven't figured out, this one over here is Pastor Randy. And then, well, you can figure out who the other two are. But this is the first day. And I know at least one person sitting here recognizes exactly where we are. We are at Ray's house, because Ray is the one who drove us into Dallas to be able to meet. So, but you can see the excitement. I think those two are a little bit more excited than I am, but you have to understand, I know who I'm going with.
Wow.
Go ahead.
Wow.
Go from there.
That's where you wanted to go, was there. So, no, like you said, it was one of those things, that it had been quite a while since even I'd been on a mission trip. I was still in high school the last time that you guys helped send me to Mexico. And that was my last time out of the country for those kind of situations, to be introduced to that. And, a lot of the people that are sitting here supported me during that time, and once again supported me when we decided to go to Africa. As we go to start, though, you see the picture of us, of all of us sitting there and smiling and being excited to go. But the weeks prior that Dad kind of skipped over was the stressful part of making sure of, where do we find the money? Where do we figure out what we're going to do? What is it going to look like when we leave? What am I, I'm leaving my wife with my small daughter for 2 weeks, and what is this going to look like? And, we're sitting here and we're going through all these thought processes, and you're trying to go through all these prayers, and the support that we were given from our church was just immense. Yeah. And, one of the things that ended up happening was, come to find out, with this mission trip where Dad had a month or two to figure it out, I had about 6 hours. By the time I heard about it to the time that the deposit was due, I had about 6 to 8 hours, and I'm going, I have no clue where I'm going to find. I don't even remember how much the deposit was. It was like $300 or $400 or something like that. And I was trying to figure it out, and I was like, I don't know where I'm going to find it, all this stuff. And I had several of you say, God will provide. Mm-hmm. And I started praying at that exact moment, if this is supposed to happen, let it be a sign from you, so that I would know more than anything else that this is what you want for my life, and this is what you want to do. And what ended up happening was, I went home that day and took the jars of change. Everybody else, you walk in the door, you dig down into your pockets, you just drop change in a coin jar, and you just keep going, right? Haley and I dumped those coin jars on the ground, and I counted them all up, and we put them in stacks, dollars, out on a card table. Started one corner, went all the way across. There was not $1 more or $1 less than that deposit. We were within about 45 cents. And that is how God started my trip. Now we're going to talk about how God ended it, right? Because believe me, He worked through the entire thing. And it was just something that I will never forget, because it started with that moment when I sat there and went, God provides. It goes back to the Nazarene saying that we all have, God is good all the time. And all the time, God is good. And He proved that right off the bat, and He was with us through this whole trip. Our first day there, we get there and we land, and, we'd had all kinds of fun flights, 15 hours flying to, or 8. It was 8.5 to Germany, and then another 8 to go down to Nairobi. And then by the time we land in Nairobi, it's already dark. They've shut down the terminals. We're walking through. They actually have us get off the plane directly onto the tarmac. You get onto the tarmac, you're grabbing your stuff, you're getting on a bus, and the next thing you know, you are standing there with about, an army is what it felt like, of all of these guys standing there with all these AK-47s sitting over their shoulder, and you're like, if my papers aren't up to date, I'm going to know real soon, And after an eternity going through check-ins and trying to figure out all that stuff, and God providing once again there to get us through for as minimal as a cost of what it could have been. They wanted to charge us several thousand US dollars to bring in the material that we were bringing in for this church. And luckily we were able to kind of talk our way through that, and got through the borders pretty easily. But coming through
in that miracle, we had set aside $950 in order to be able to pay for the tariff tax to bring. Mm-hmm. We were bringing electronic stuff in. We set $950 aside. They wanted, like Samuel said, they wanted several thousand, and the leader of our group says, no, we don't have that much. And the guy turned around and said, okay, how about $900? And we had $950 set aside. So we praise God for that. That is a miracle.
So
Go ahead.
but like I said, our first day driving through Nairobi, by the way, we think that traffic is bad in the United States, especially Texans going 75 miles an hour down a highway. Imagine there being no stop signs, no stoplights, some roundabouts all over the place, and the speed limit is whatever your car can go. For some, that meant that our semis were going 15 miles an hour on the highway because they were overloaded to the point that that's how fast they could go because the engines were going as much as what they possibly could, all the way up to people like our driver, who I'm pretty sure was going about 95 miles an hour. And there is no such thing as personal space with vehicles. As long as you don't clip somebody's bumper, it's legal. So they passed on the left, they passed on the right, they passed through the ditch, they passed anywhere you want to go. Again, God got us there. And we had definitely prayed up by the time we got to ANU. So we get through all this, but here are some of the buildings that were on campus. Over here on the right, we've got the boys' dorms sitting here, and these two are just straight hallway dorms. They have running water and showers in them, but that's it. As far as your air conditioning, heating, all that good stuff, either the window is open or the window is closed. That is all you've got. I believe on our next one we've got actually the girls' dorm. This was kind of a newer building, is multi-story. From what we were told, it's about the same. And then, of course,
and these panels that you see up on top of the building, those are solar panels for being able to heat the hot water.
To heat the hot water tanks. So, then the basketball court here was actually where the ANU basketball team actually practiced. This is their practice court. And we went out there and they were practicing with basketballs that, if they were under, I felt like I was younger than some of the basketballs that they were using for practice. They had a good game ball, but as far as practice, but you never would have known that by their faces and by the way that they were acting. And, the guys were out there and, when coach was around, they were serious. They had their game face on and they were doing exactly what they were told, just like what they do here. And then at the same point, they'd turn around, and as soon as the coach turned around, they're shoving each other over and playing and goofing off. So we loved that it didn't matter which college you're at. College kids are college kids. So they were having a blast doing that as well. So brick roads everywhere and hills. Here in Texas, we're used to it flat. Not so much. We got used to climbing hills and mountains all over the place. Because Nairobi is a mile-high city, just like Denver. So your air quality is a lot thinner than what we were used to here. And in turn, we
were also only 2 degrees south of the equator as well.
Right, so we're right on the equator, mile high, the sun's beaming down. It's not that hot because you're a mile high, but you would walk outside and get sunburnt almost immediately. Yeah. Like you had to stay covered. And of course, air quality is different because of emission controls. So our next one, you've got your local hangout for the kids. This was once again still on campus. Back behind there, that's if you would go through these doors, it was kind of like a pool hall area, and kind of there was soda machines and different things like that. And so it was just kind of a good hangout that all the kids would usually be at. And it was a good place to kind of catch up and to meet some of them. Just kind of chat. You would see a lot of kids out there eating meals, lunch, dinner. I'm actually surprised there's not any monkeys in this photo, because usually that's where you'd find the monkeys. Because if people are eating somewhere, like how we're used to squirrels, they have 2 different things. You either have their smaller monkeys, which I forget the name of them, or they have hyrax, which I don't know if anybody's heard of a hyrax before, but it's essentially a giant mouse.
Rat.
It's a giant rat. It's about yay big.
Yeah.
And they have zero fear, and they will come straight up to you and steal things off your plate if you're not careful. So, that's our next one, Ash. So, we had to get these two in here. First off, the powerhouse, which was one of the best places that we came to find. This was actually, everything's ran off of diesel generators. Because of the infrastructure of Nairobi. It's actually, it's a city of 4 million?
Yeah, over 4 million.
There was over 4 million people in the city, and the infrastructure is only set for less than 1 million people. So the power grid just could not keep up. So multiple times a day, these diesel generators would just kick up in the middle of the day, start roaring, because, I mean, Haley can tell you, Mom can tell you, as we would try to call, all of a sudden just boom, everything's down. And they would be like, where'd you go? We'd have to wait a couple of minutes, call them back, and they'd be like, what happened? And it's because the electricity just can't quite keep up. So they had diesel generators for everything. And then
this building over here, this clinic,
yeah.
When I took this picture, I just thought, hey, you know, we probably ought to know where this building is, not realizing that Samuel was going to end up spending quite a bit of time there.
I ended up moving in for a day. That was fun.
So, but it was a good thing we knew where it was.
Yeah.
Since Samuel got to spend quite a bit of time there. So.
Next. Okay. So.
This one over here, I know this probably doesn't mean a whole lot to you guys, but that big tower up there, that's their water tower. And this was one of two. There's actually another one that sits on top of a or right beside the top of a building.
And that is the clean water tower.
Yeah, that's clean water.
They've had, I think they told us 6 different filtration systems total. There was 3 going into the tower, and then there was 3 coming out of the tower into the tap. And we still were not able to drink the water because of all of the things that were in it. We had a lot of people on both teams that ended up with not dysentery, but a mild form of due to the water. And even though we didn't drink it, we drank bottled water only. Even just showering in it, we had a lot of people get sick from that. So that was quite different. Then of course the house over here.
This house over here, you remember when Rob North came? Many of you remember a little over a year ago when Rob North came and talked to us about African Nazarene University and the fact he was looking forward to our team coming. Well, this is where he and his wife live. It's in this house right here. This was their house. They are now back in the United States because of the COVID situation. They had to come back to the United States, but this is actually their house that they live in. So I thought y'all might be interested in that for those of you that remembered Rob. And his wife is actually the chaplain of the university. And so, okay. This is the building we stayed in. And this is actually the very first morning after we had gotten up. We were getting ready to go to breakfast. This window right here, this is where Samuel and I stayed. We stayed right there in that room. And these guys, Samuel's taking the picture. That's why Samuel's not in the picture. But these guys had become, very good friends over the 2 weeks, and still good friends. And I'll let you talk a little bit about Jamil.
So, Jermaine is here at the end. He's actually became a really good buddy of mine. We're only about a year apart. He was there for a master's program and has been working through, and he's just trying to get his legs underneath him to be more in a business setting. So he's working on his MBA to try to get to that, and trying to figure out how to network, trying to get some of these things set up that here in the U.S. we take for granted, right? And so he and his brother live just a few blocks outside of the school, and he ends up actually walking to school every day, going through. I say a few blocks; it's actually, I guess, a couple of miles, really. But he became a really good friend. We ended up hanging out quite a bit, especially since our group. They gave me a very hard time about being the baby. They didn't call me the kid, they called me the baby, because pretty much Dad and David are the next ones in age closest to me. So Jermaine was really excited, and we got to hang out most of the 2 weeks together. He actually ended up leaving for a small mission trip of his own while he was there. They went a little bit further south of Kenya, and what they were trying to do is going into these very rural communities that a lot of people are having difficulties either getting to or different things like that. And taking the idea of, he took a bunch of soccer balls to him and basketballs, and there was one of his friends he was working with had been in the NBA here. I believe. No, what sport did he play?
European basketball.
Okay, it was basketball, but European basketball. And they were just trying to get the word out and trying to get these kids to see a different side of what life could be, while also taking the opportunity of not just teaching them about business or about sports or about these different things, but also taking the time to share Christ with them as well. So he was actually gone for a couple of days to do that, which we were excited to help support him with. If you notice through the windows, though, in the background, on the outside it's just straight pane glass, but on the inside you can see all the metal bars and you can see the metal cages and all this stuff. And every building actually had those. Every building was actually completely locked up of an evening, and it was made sure that at any point in time there were metal bars between you and outside. And then all the way around the campus was actually an 8-foot tall fence with barbed wire on top, which, for a college, I went to a Nazarene college in Oklahoma. You've been to Nazarene colleges, we know there's not fences. You just kind of walk and go and wherever. So we took the time and we asked, and they were like, okay, here's the reasoning. And by the way, don't walk out at night after dark. And we went, what? And they're like, at 9 o'clock, we're going to release the dogs. And we said, the dogs? And they said, yes. And come to find out, they have German Shepherds. There's about 20 or 30 of them. They just literally release into the complex and just let them roam free. And their whole job is to keep baboons out. And that's what all these metal bars are for. Because the baboons will actually break in, they will steal food, they will mess up a place, and to be honest, they are highly, highly aggressive. Mm-hmm. So where we see baboons at a zoo that have been a little more tamed, a little more, they're kind of calmer, they're sitting on a tree. Did we see them like that? Yes, but they were really, really far away. They did warn us that they are highly aggressive and they are very, very strong. And so they actually would do that every evening for baboons and also for the potential of lions still. Even though we were on just one side of Nairobi, there was actually a game park that it kind of backs up to. And so they said that it would be very common to actually see those. We never did, thank goodness. But we did see lots of baboons, and they are a little more terrifying than what they are in a zoo, I have to admit. We got our next photo, sis. So you want to talk about the doors?
These doors actually go on one of the main buildings, the main structure buildings there that has the cafeteria and then also houses the office spacing for your president and the vice president, the financial officers of the school and what have you. But these doors, as you can tell, the etching is just incredible. And the skill set, these were actually made by local people, and
all hand carved.
And it's all hand carved. If you'll notice, they're not exactly the same. Any two elephants is not exactly the same. Giraffes are not exactly the same because it is all done by hand, and it's just beautiful. The picture actually does not do it justice. But if you move to the next slide, this gives you an idea how tall the door is. Samuel's 6 foot. Well, he's bent down just a little bit, and he's only about half the size of it. These doors were about 11 foot tall. I would not even want to try to guess as to how much one of those doors weighed, but
we tried to open them. That was fun enough. So I can't imagine trying to carry them. One of the things that we did get to do, though, is besides working on campus and working with our students, which we'll share just a little bit, they did want to give us a couple of opportunities to see some more like sightseeing activities as well. So part of the things that we did, we spent just a couple of days, I think it was about 3 days total, the entire trip, actually going out to be able to see these different things. So one of them was actually a elephant sanctuary where they actually find these elephants out in the wild, and they're all going to be calves, they're all babies, and they actually take them in and they actually will raise them up. Because of the ivory trade, it is illegal to hunt them. At the same point, we all know how that goes. Just because it's illegal doesn't mean it's stopped happening. So they are worried about elephants becoming more endangered. And so there are groups like this that are taking these. And you can see they actually are bottle feeding, which we thought was amazing. And there's something to be said when, I can't imagine how that guy feels, but he's probably worked there for years and years. But at the same point, when we're looking at an elephant that's a baby, that's already my height, and is only got that tiny, thin little rope between us, you do think twice about a 400-pound elephant than what you do when you sit there and go, oh, look how beautiful they are from afar. You start to really get the majesty and the just size of these things.
One of the things about the elephants, though, is that they actually will monitor for several weeks to make sure that a calf who has been left alone does not have a mother that does come back around. They don't just go in and steal them. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? They want to make sure that the calf, so they constantly are monitoring the herds of elephants, and when they see strays that don't look like they're being taken care of, that's when they come in and they take them from, the youngest ones usually are about 6 months old, but then they keep them until they're 4 years old. By the time they're 4 years old, now they're over 1,000 pounds. They're probably pushing closer to that 1,400-pound mark. And by the time they're 4 years old, they start reindating them back into the wild. So they don't just keep them.
They'll take them back to a park.
But they actually try to take them, but they're all tagged to know exactly where they came from. And so they try to get them right back to where they came from, so that hopefully the smells of them will be familiar with the others, and they'll be allowed to come back in and be a part of the same pod of which they had been originally born into, which I thought was pretty neat. Then after this particular sanctuary, we went to a foundry, and this foundry is kind of cool. I could have shown you a whole lot more pictures, but I just wanted to show you the rustic view of this foundry. But what they do is this stuff here is actually a clay type material that is native to that area, and they take that and they actually take it and form it into different things. In fact, this particular cup was made at that foundry. And oh, by the way, this is made by hand, and it's hand painted.
They hand spin them, hand make them. It starts literally as dust, and they go all the way through to adding the water, drying, to
putting it in a kiln.
Putting it in, yeah. And so we were actually able to walk straight up to the kennels and see and feel the heat coming off those things. And,
and they hadn't been burning for hours. They only do it over nighttime, because it's 2,000 degree heat. They only do it at nighttime. Then in the morning they shut it down, and they have to wait on it to cool. And we were in there what time of the day?
11:30.
Yeah, probably 11:30, and they were still hot.
The cool thing about this place, besides the cups, and they also made beads. I believe there's the wrist one is from the Maasai, but I think Ashley has one, Mom has one. So they make little beads as well. They're all hand painted, hand done, and hand strung, right? But all of them are actually done by women. It is actually a ministry in itself that's actually been used to hire women that do not have husbands, but most of them still have kids. So the husbands have either passed away or something has happened to them.
Incarcerated, or were abusive husbands.
Right. And so what this is supposed to do is give them an opportunity to be able to raise money in a way that is safe and easy for them. And so that is the ministry that they've put together, is to help these women to be able to get back into society, to be able to pay for their own rent, to be able to pay for things. Because, they're, as far as what we think a daily rate or daily average should be as far as income, they told us, we were walking down the highways, and they're literally sitting there with machetes. They're cutting them. We see these big John Deeres. They're walking back and forth, and they're just slashing all this grass and cutting it. And they're men, women, doesn't really, some of them were young enough, I thought they were kids, to be honest, as we're driving by. And we would talk to them about this idea of, okay, so what are they making to cut this grass? And they're telling me that they would do that for 8 straight hours in a day, and they would make $5 US. That's it. So the other opportunity is that here they were saying that they are actually able to make more than that, which was nice as well, because a lot of these ladies, technically they would either be cutting grass or they would, just be left by society. They wouldn't care. It's not that they wouldn't care. I guess there's just so many people that they kind of get lost. And so this group and this facility actually helps to provide, a decent wage, which they told us would be somewhere between $5 to $10 for the day, depending on how long they'd been there, and also they're supplying places for them to live, which is amazing, So it was a really good place. That's why we wanted to buy things from them, because everything we buy went straight back to them. So, Ash, the next one. So the other idea is we did get to go to the giraffe sanctuary and get to see some giraffes as well, which we got to feed them. You can see down here in the corner. They have really rough tongues. It's really weird. It's kind of like cats as far as the roughness, sandpapery. But instead of a cat where you have this tiny little tongue that licks you, they have a tongue that's like multiple feet. And if you have a piece of their food and you are facing backwards, they will not care. They will steal it from you. So they were really fun to kind of be around. They were just used to being around people, but they were absolutely gorgeous. And that was a good time that we got to spend as well in Nairobi. So our next one. So talking about housing, this was it. We saw a lot of this as we went through our poverty line, poverty level. There was actually a place that it's only about a quarter of the size of Nairobi, and it's essentially built straight up a hill. And you will see these style of homes, just one after another, after another, after another, and they're just built on top and on top. And they say that nearly 2 million people live in this tiny little area. A lot of housing, though, is like this. It's random sheet metal that they have found, and they've kind of thrown together to get something as far as housing goes. Ash, if you go to the next one, though. But what we loved about Kenya was the people. Because, you can see how these people are living, and you know that they're living in poverty, and like I said, they're making $5 a day. There's not refrigerators. You can't rely on the electricity, really, to keep them, so they're buying their food every single day. So they've got to walk to a store. They have to farm it themselves. They have to, they'll have little propane stoves, like our little propane tanks. They make little ones that are about yay big, and they have a little burner on top, and they literally will cook directly on top of them. And they'll have to go through and buy that stuff all the time. But everyone we ran into, just like this guy driving down the road, you can see that he's building furniture by hand to sell. Everyone was in a great mood. They were loving life. They were working hard. We literally watched people sit on the side of the road with giant rocks, giant stones, with a hammer and a chisel, and they busted it up into gravel, and then they would load the gravel into a truck. You know how we have giant machines that crush it? They're literally sitting by hand, and they said they would sit there all day long. The guy would just sit on the ground, chisel and hammer. He's just busting this stuff up. You'd wave, and he'd wave and smile back, and he'd go right back to it all the time. Next one. So they do have some forms of infrastructure. You can see some different housing. Actually, this housing on the right, I talked about Jermaine earlier. This is actually his apartment. I don't know which one. We never got to know that part. But like I said, this is a couple of miles from the school. He would live there and then travel back and forth to the school as well.
And in this other picture, I wanted for you to, this is actually in the main infrastructure of Nairobi, and you can see cattle right there in the middle of the road. It was not an uncommon thing. And oh, by the way, if you get in an accident with another vehicle, so be it. You guys work it out. You get in an accident and you kill a cow, you could go to jail, because that's how important cattle is to them.
Yep.
And so it's a totally different scenario than what we're used to here in the United States when it comes to that. So, and just to show you, there was many a times that we'd have to stop and wait on cows to walk across the middle of the street, and it's not something that you see. This is Texas, and we don't see that, do we? But this is kind of the beginning of ANU. In this picture, this is another view of ANU. This is one of the newer buildings that had been built. As far as the other buildings that we showed you pictures of, This particular building is the one that Samuel and I spent most of our time in, was working in this building here, and we'll show you why here in just a little bit. But as you can tell, it's kind of incredible architecture to be able to put all of this together. That the dome that's up in the middle, it has about 50% of the glass in it that was originally there, and the other 50 they've fallen out. So if you guys can, it doesn't take rocket scientists probably to figure this out, but if you got a structure that has no glass and they don't have any ways or means to get up there and replace the glass, it was not uncommon for us to be trying to get birds to get out of the inside of the building. Yep.
Now, with this one, this is your basketball arena. This is also where the chapel is and all that, which we'll show you. But also all the way around it is a lot of classrooms. And so a lot of our groups spent a lot of time actually updating these classrooms and getting them up to what we would consider a 21st century classroom. So when we showed up, we're talking the old wooden style desks that a lot of you enjoyed in school, right? The metal A-frame shape and the tiny little desk. And, again, no air, no heat, open windows, and a chalkboard. We were able to go through and spend a lot of time actually updating these, putting in projectors, TV, microphones, all these different things to get it to the point so that they could actually set up a classroom so that they could have both class in person but also could simulcast at the same time. So I mean, when we're talking about moving it up to the 21st century, I was actually sitting there and I went, I'm jealous, my classroom doesn't even look like this. So it was amazing and exciting to be able to make some of these changes and see how excited these kids would get over what we would think is just, we're like, yeah, it's a $40 microphone. And they'd be like, no, you don't understand. And they'd be all excited. And it was just amazing to see. And they also, of course, spent a lot of time painting the hallways because everything was yellow. And thank goodness it is no longer. So next one, Ash. Now, these are the actual gates to the school. As you come through the gate, like I told you, they have everything blocked off for different animals, but also come to find out there are other issues that they can have as far as with people and different things that can arise with that as well. So there is actually always an armed guard sitting there, and they have a roster and a list. And if you are not on that list, or if you took a bus out and you were supposed to be at a certain time and you are back late, they are very, very detail oriented when it comes to that, and safety first for our kids. So just once again, a different thing than what we're used to here in the U.S.
And the security team of ANU is actually employed by ANU as from an outside source. Mm-hmm. They are not. It is not a Nazarene organization. It is outsourced. And so when Samuel says they take it quite literally,
right,
they are very literal.
And there's usually about 3 or 4 guys in this building and a couple in that one. And again, once again, we give Texans a hard time about us loving to carry. They're always carrying an AK. Like that, if there's a firearm, that's what they're carrying. And so it was just one of those. It was a very weird thought for us, as we're used to walking around. Are we used to seeing, people in Walmart open carrying a pistol? Maybe. But we're not really used to somebody walking through with an AK-47 on their back, just walking around. And everywhere you went, that was what you walked up to. Guys had them all the time. Same with female security officers. Actually, due to different beliefs and also the way the government is set up there, if they had to do personal searches, there was a male and a female security officer. And then we were split up accordingly, so that by gender, so that they could search through and check and make sure that we weren't a threat. Everywhere we went, there was magnetic, metal detectors, wands. Always, security was always a big deal everywhere we went. Ash, the next one. So, of course, Ashley's favorite, the library.
Yep, we had to put this one in there for Ashley.
With books. which was nice.
Yeah, it does
So-
come with books.
Once again, open air though, a lot of things that they're dealing with is mold issues, of course. Anytime you leave paper open to the, elements, that's one of the problems that they can have. So they're trying to move a lot of things over to digital as well. But again, with the electric system and computers, it's fun for them right now.
When we told them that Ashley is working on her master's in library science and also works in a library, they instantly wanted to know if she would come to work for them because they're looking for a librarian. And
they asked for a resume. They hadn't met her. We thought it was amazing.
Yeah. And I said, do you have air conditioning? And they said no, and I said she won't apply. So anyway.
All right, next. So,
Okay, this here, all right, let me kind of back up just a little bit. The pictures of the things that we showed you earlier of the going and seeing the giraffes and the elephants and stuff like that all took place the very first weekend. We actually got there on Friday night and it was dark. And so Saturday and Sunday we went and did these different things. But Sunday morning we had the opportunity to be able to go to a church service there on campus. They actually have Chapman Hall, not Hall. That's SNU. Anyway, they have
Chapman.
they
It's just
have
the chapel.
Anyway, it's the Chapman Chapel, and so we go in to worship, and Ashley, I'm not going to want you to play all of this, but if you could, can you play a little bit of this for us?
I don't know how you can tell they, as far as electronics and different stuff like that, there was keyboards, drum set, different stuff like that, but all of it is just the energy that we were felt the entire time. These are people, once again, we're talking about, we talk about poverty in the U.S., and that's the norm there. And these are people that they are praising God with everything they have. They lay nothing on the line when they walk through that door. And it's just amazing to see and be a part of.
All right,
Ash.
that's probably enough. Sorry for the sound quality, but I'm sitting there holding the camera trying to get, on a phone, so trying to get the best. But anyway, as you can tell, they're full of energy. The dress, I mean, the way they dress. Now,
that was awesome.
Now, I want Samuel, though, to explain what happened when it came to Sunday school time, because you really got a kick out of what happened to you. Okay, anyway.
So, just like normal church, they're running church service, but beforehand they're doing Sunday school. A gentleman comes up and invites the entire group, of all of our people to go to Sunday school. And I'm standing there, and the next thing I know, my buddy Jermaine, he taps me on the shoulder and he goes, "Brother, our Sunday school's over here." And I went, "Oh, okay. Yeah, that sounds good. Look, where are we going?" And he goes, "We're going to go with the teens." And I said, "Oh, okay. That sounds great." And he goes, Dad turns around and goes, "Wait, how come you invited him to go to the teens and not me?" Jermaine looks directly at him and just starts blushing and starts smiling and goes, "'Cause you're old." So, Dad and David were not allowed to go to teens because they're old. So that was one of our favorite parts, or my favorite parts of Sunday morning service. I'd ask our next one. There you go.
After we go to this church service, well, then we are taken to lunch. We're going to actually eat out this time. And so we go to this lodge, and Samuel can tell you, we drove 10 miles down the roughest, I mean, you cannot even think of a road in Texas as rough as this. I mean, there was actually one hole that we went down in that we were convinced that there was a Volkswagen Bug in the bottom of it. It was that big. And we drove 10 miles. It took us 40 minutes to go 10 miles because of how rough it was. And we pull up to a 4-star lodge out in the middle of nowhere. Just in the middle of nowhere. And you'll see
Next
what
one,
we
huh?
mean by 4-star, and that this is part of the dining room.
Next.
I know, it's just beautiful. And then this This is a terrace that looks down over a hill. This is where we ate out on the terrace, and it was just an incredible time of getting together. I took the opportunity to step out and take this picture, but this is our group, and there's more pictures of this area. This is down at the bottom of the hill. Is a water, and I didn't show you, but just to the right of this decking is a pool. Beautiful blue water pool just sitting right there. But then I want Samuel to explain about this tree.
So these trees are only native to Africa. They are actually, it's essentially very similar to our crepe myrtles here. But instead of just growing up in all these different plumes like what we're used to, they're all actually built together. They all kind of come together and combine together and bind. And it was kind of an amazing sight to see, because they were talking about the idea of how a single tree can go through and lose it due to drought or to wind or to all these different things, to the elements. But these trees are very, I don't want to say sacred, but they tend to treat them with more respect, I guess, because of the way they're set up. Since all of these are apart, they used it a lot, talking about the idea of community and being a part of something, because all these trees come together and bulk together and build together so that they can become stronger, they can become one. And so it was really cool to kind of hear these guys talk about these trees and the respect for them. I know it doesn't look like it, but I am taking that photo. I'm probably every bit of 300 to 400 yards away from it. That tree was over 6 feet around in diameter. So once again, laying on the ground, that tree was wider than what I am tall. And as far as height, we're talking every bit of 60 to 80 feet. I mean, it was just a massive, beautiful tree, and to hear the reverence and respect
and all the information that we're being told about this tree is actually being given to us by one of the security guards that works there.
Yep.
He works security, and he walks with Samuel and I, and he's telling us about this tree and the importance of community. And he proceeds to also tell us that they predict that tree is well over 200 years old.
Yeah.
Then also he shared with us, and it's kind of hard to see, but you can kind of see a little bit of a ridge of a hill up here. Up on that ridge, just 2 weeks before we were there, there was a lioness and 2 cubs that were actually going along that ridge just 2 weeks before we were there. And he had witnessed seeing that himself. So he said that was not uncommon. This is more of the waterway that's down there at the bottom of the valley. It's just a beautiful place. And Linda, this is where we ate goat. Was at this place, okay? It's our 3rd day there, and we're getting inundated with goat. So anyway. This is also some of the vegetation. Many of you may realize that this is being the bird of paradise flower. This was right outside of the lodge, and it was so pretty. I just had to take a picture of it. It's just, just beautiful.
Next.
Okay. This is what we actually started working on, though. This is what Samuel and I spent most of our time doing.
So as far as sound systems go, this is a Behringer X32, which is the exact same thing that we have here at our church. Now, we don't have the analog version, the big beautiful thing that you see in front of you. All of ours is digital and is ran off an iPad or a computer. But like I said, as far as electricity goes there, we wanted to make sure that they had something that they didn't have to lug around a computer constantly, because this gym is used for everything. It's the gym, it's the chapel, it's all this different stuff. So we were able to go through and set all this stuff up for them, and label everything. And it was amazing because the soundboard they were using before literally was older than I am. It was built in the 80s. Half of the channels weren't working. It was something that another church group had bought or had brought with them into the country. It was originally U.S. made, been used in a church for nearly 20 years, and then taken to ANU and was gifted to them. And then they used it for another 20 plus, almost 30 years. I mean, the thing...
Ancient. Is that what you're trying to say?
It was completely analog, and it was very, very, very old. So being able to set this stuff up for them, we got to meet a lot of amazing kids. because to see their excitement about this, brought in anybody from the chapel department, our instrumentalist for our praise band. We also saw a lot of our communication majors. They were actually very disappointed that this was only used for chapel and not for the communication department, because they said it was nicer than what they have. So they were really excited to see it and be a part of it, and we were able to do a lot of training. You know, we spent, like I said, Dad and I spent a lot of time in this room of trying to figure out, okay, what was the best way to set up the speakers? What was the best way to get all these different things set up? Because they had four 20-inch subs. You know, these big speakers that do this bass music. They love the low tones. And so we were able to go through and set this thing up and bridge it so that they would be able to get more out of their system than what they had had before, and to give them a cleaner sound. It was very common for them, because of having an analog system, for it to screech and scream. You remember being in the church over here on Wesley back in the day when we were still there. You guys remember the sound system that we had there? It was a little analog one, and it would scream at us all the time. And you guys would look back at me and go, "What is the pastor's kid doing today? He's not paying attention." You were right, but also, no, just kidding. No, it was one of those that it was just due to that style, and so this one is able to cut a lot of that out for him, and we were able to change things and change the microphones around so that they were specific to the singer. So we were able to set them up with an EQ built only for a soprano, and then turn around only for our altos, only for our tenors, set equalizers that are built specifically for the bass guitar, instead of only having one equalizer for the entire system. So it was amazing to get, instead of that tin can sound that you can have, it was something they were so excited to get set up and to be trained on. And like I said, we met, I can't even tell you, 30 or 40 kids.
Yeah.
And, we got to train them, and we got to talk to them, we got to eat with them, and just the blessing that was.
And when it comes to training, as Samuel hasn't really mentioned this yet, but when it comes to training, here you set up a podcast, or you set up a training time, and people would come and join you. And so we would set up a time, like we had several communication majors that wanted to be trained on how to use this board, and we said, okay, show up at, how about 10 o'clock on Wednesday? And all of them looked at us, 10 works.
Sounds great.
It sounds great. And then we show up and there's one. And then the other 9 come on Thursday and say, hey, can we have a training on this as well?
Hey.
Hey. And so
most of them would show up at 11.
Well, and that's true too. They would show up at 11.
The idea of time, right? We always joke about the idea of going through and talking about the relevance of time, right? And especially for our physics major, he understands this one. But as far as they go, time is not a construct that is finite, that is concrete. It is more of a suggestion.
Yes.
So when they would tell you, hey, let's show up for a meal at 6 o'clock. Well, Americans with our finite concrete time, we would show up at 5:55 or earlier, so that we were there to make sure our hands were washed and prepared for the meal at 6. We would get there, we'd sit down, and then the meal would be at 7:30. Almost every night. It got to the point I started showing up 30 minutes late because I just knew the meal wasn't ready.
Yeah.
So it was just kind of fun, and it also gave us more time with the kids and to train them on this. So again, here's your chapel. All of these walls, everything is concrete.
Yeah.
So again, trying to deal with sound in a concrete room, anybody who's done that before, it bounces off everything. And we were trying to figure out how to set up delays and reverbs and all kinds of things to get rid of all of that echoey sound that they were having. So here's actually one of our chapels that we had. There is actually over 2,600 students in this chapel right now.
And that picture shows it better.
2,600. And we went through and we were talking about the idea of you've got your people. With ANU, you are not required to be a Nazarene. You are not required to be a Christian, but you are required to go to chapel. So this time, we have a lot of kids that are up and they're praising and they're exciting and they're having a good time and they're praising with the team and they're doing all this stuff. And then you still have your kids sitting in the back that are falling asleep. sitting there playing on a phone, sitting there doing this, all these different things.
Didn't
But it's
you used
still,
to do the same thing at chapel at SNU?
that's beside the point.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
But it's one of those that it is the opportunity for them to hear it. It's the opportunity for them to see it. It's that reaching out that they were looking for. And to see, even if there was 2,600 students, to see 1,800 people excited and on fire for the Lord, and to be praising and to be singing at the top of their lungs was a part of my life I'll never forget.
Right.
To know that we are truly a part of the family. I had people ask me when we got back and I showed them these pictures, they were like, was it weird as you looked around and you went, how many Caucasians are in there?
Nah. They made us feel welcome.
Here's my thing. When we started to praise and we started to sing, it didn't matter what language it was in. It didn't matter what tongue was being used. It didn't matter what was going on. It was the God Almighty that we serve.
That's right.
And it was the praising and the excitement. And it was exciting to see that this was the family of Christ. So people asked me, did it feel weird being the one of very few white people there? I never thought about it the entire time. I didn't know it was weird until I got back and somebody asked me.
Yeah.
Because, again, it is the same family, and it is the fellow believers, and it was the same Jesus. We sang in 3 different languages. Every song. There'd be people singing it in English, there'd be people singing it in Swahili, and then there was another dialect that was being sang in as well, and everything was projected 3 times, and just to hear it all at once, you would think it would give this weird sound, but it really didn't. It just all was beautiful and blended together. So, but after that, we did spend actually the next weekend, we got to spend a little more time out and about, having a little bit of that sightseeing thing. They asked us what we wanted to do. And I kind of felt like I had a little power for one time, because Rob asked me. He pulls me aside and he goes, you're the youngest one here, I'm going to ask you, what do you want to do? And I said, what do you mean? And he goes, we can go to 2 different parks. It doesn't matter which one, I need to know. And I said, well, what's the difference? And he goes, in one, you are guaranteed to see lions in the wild. In the other one, you'll see lots of elephants, but you'll get to see Kilimanjaro in the background. And I looked at him and said, I can see a lion in Dallas if I wanted to go see one. Kilimanjaro never moves. So we ended up going south of Kenya to actually go see Kilimanjaro. This was actually another place that we were going to stay. He scared a lot of our people because he told us that we were going to stay in tents. And we needed to be ready to look at tents. So Ash, let's look at these beautiful tents.
That's a tent.
This was a tent. He had warned us all week about a tent we were going to stay in. We showed up and I went, really? This is your idea of roughing it? But it was Rob and he just laughed the entire time. So once again, roughing it. This was a rough weekend that we had. This was the first time that Dad and I spent a night on a bed that we fit on.
Yes.
Because the rest of the time, we were on a regular-sized twin, and both of our feet stuck off the end. In this case, though, we actually had queen-size beds. Both of us laid completely sideways across them and stretched out as far as we possibly could. And I think that was the best sleep I had gotten the entire trip. But these are just cloth walls. They're all, but it did come with, they're canvas. It did come with our own restroom, which once again was amazing. We'd been sharing a restroom with how many other guys? 7?
7.
Yeah, 7 other guys, 1 bathroom, 1 shower, 1 toilet, 7 men.
Not fun.
Mm-hmm. It reminded me of college, not in the good ways. Next. So we ended up going to Amberseli, which was an amazing national park, which is where we did get to go and actually see Kilimanjaro. So, of course, lots and lots of elephants, and they are just gorgeous to see.
I wanted to make sure and throw this in here because a lot of pictures you're going to see, right, we're going to move kind of quickly through the animal pictures, but a lot of them you're going to see, there's no trees in the background. I wanted you all to know there were trees.
Yes.
In
the savannah, there are still trees.
And it's pretty cool. Now this, I think, is worth the 19 seconds to show you this video. Can you hear the footsteps? The majesticness of this. I mean, we are not much more than 100 feet away from that elephant when we're taking this.
This was actually one of the males of the group. You can see he is actually walking in the back. Elephants are actually ran by the grandmothers. Yep. If you did not know, they actually lead. There is a single lead female who is in charge of the entire group, and so she leads the pod, walking around in front, and then usually a younger male is the one that is in the very back. So, of course, like I said, we did see lots of monkeys, lots of baboons. It was amazing to see back behind our place that we stayed in at the school. There was actually this giant valley, and then there was a hillside on the back with farmers. And we actually saw goats literally get picked up and carried off by baboons. And so they warned us of all these things, and we're, like, dude, do not approach a baboon. And then we would look back in the mornings and watch these guys who are shepherds, literally with their sheep, and they would have a stick, and they would pick up rocks, and they would chunk them at these things. And that's what they would do to go out and defend their herds, was literally a rock or a stick. And they're fighting these things that I literally watched pick up a goat and run with. So again, just a little different what we're used to. Again, we did see a lot of wildlife, gazelles. We've got the next one. Of course, we all know the name of this one. Pumbaa. Yeah, come to find out, Disney was not very creative in the names. Pumbaa is actually the name of warthog.
Of a warthog? That's a Swahili name?
Yeah, Swahili. That's all it is. Come to find out, Simba literally just means young male lion. Nala, young female lion. Again, all the names pretty much are just based off of that. Here was our hyena friend that we got to see up close and way too personal for my liking. They are not pretty animals, I got to tell you. They just aren't. They make weird noises and they're kind of ugly. Giant birds, we did see ostriches as well, but they, we just didn't get very close because they were running off in the background. I couldn't get a good photo. But again, all these are wild. This is just out in a field that we're just driving down the road. Zebras.
We did see zebras. Water buffalo and stuff like that. This is a rarity. It is not a normal thing for you to see a hippo out of the water. So the driver was actually fascinated that we were actually able to see a hippo out of the water, and so took several pictures of it as well. But this is like I said earlier, we stayed at another 4-star. I mean, this is the restaurant area that we stayed and we ate. Samuel and I ate at this table right over here, and the other part of our group sat over here. We ended up taking up 3 tables between our group from Texas and the group that was with us from Oregon, and so this here it has 3 different landings that you can go to. You take stairs and you continue all the way up to the very top, and then once you get up.
I can tell you, though, that they are not ADA approved.
No, they're not ADA approved.
Those stairs are about yay wide and they're about this tall. So,
well, some of them. Then
good point. They're not all the same either.
Yeah.
So that was kind of fun, too.
Yeah.
So either way, yeah, you wanted to be careful. But it was worth it when you got to the top.
When you got to the top?
Because once again, Kilimanjaro in the background.
Kilimanjaro right back there.
It was a beautiful sight. Dad and I spent the 2 mornings that we were there. We actually woke up each morning before the sun came up and went and stood on this platform at 5-something in the morning and watched the sun rise to see Kilimanjaro in the morning. Because once it gets a little warmer, there's cloud cover and you just can't see the mountain. So you had to take all the photos in the morning. It was absolutely gorgeous. Actually, up here on the table, one of the things that we brought, I was actually walking around. One of the things is just a tiny little black rock, which I actually picked up while walking around in the park outside of the truck, which a lot of people looked at me and said, "Why did you want a tiny little black rock?" And I said, "Because it's obsidian." Obsidian is actually it's kind of like diamond. It takes a lot of heat and a lot of pressure because Kilimanjaro is a volcano and it's still active. And so now it's been dormant for years and years and years, but the ground is still covered from its obsidian from the last time it erupted. And so I was telling Ashley, you can actually take that piece of obsidian, and if somebody were to know what they were doing, they can actually look at the molecular structure and know that it came from Kilimanjaro. So it's literally a little piece of Africa that I brought back for just for sentimental reasons. But it was just a good reminder as we were walking around, seeing all of that on the ground and seeing giant stones hundreds of yards, if not miles, away from this thing, of just how powerful that mountain must have been at one point in time. So,
And then this next picture, well, I'll let Samuel finish his thought.
you know who this photo's for. This photo I took literally for Drew. In the background,
Huh?
in the background, actually up here in the corner, you can barely see that's actually not mountains. That's actually Kilimanjaro in the background. Once again, the rain, as it's rolling across, it starts rolling across, and Dad and I look at each other, and I go, I wish Drew was here. And the other group look at me, and they think I'm weird, and I just start singing, God bless the rains down in Africa. And that's all I thought of, just for you, bud.
Just for you.
I want you to know, I thought of
Toto
you.
showed up on the trip.
Yep.
Took a part of you to Africa. There we go.
I brought a part of Africa back, but I took a little part of you there. Yes. So, yeah, you should have seen all their faces, including our driver, who thought that I was probably the weirdest dude ever, but he laughed.
He did.
I think he would have let me get away with anything. He just laughed at everything I said. All right, next, Ash. So we did actually get to see some Maasai tribes, right? The Maasai warriors are the ones that at one point in time, the young men were literally at the age of about 13 to 14 to become men. They were literally sent out and left in the Serengeti by themselves, and they were actually told that they could not come back until they had the carcass of a lion over their shoulder. And that is how these men were raised, right? And there are a lot of things that we went through and got to learn about them as far as that goes. And the Maasai are still one of very few groups that can actually still actively hunt lions because they are starting to become more rare. It is illegal to hunt them in Kenya, but the Maasai tribes are still allowed to do so because of their beliefs. Now, what was cool is these are their homes. What you're looking at is essentially a multiplex. So you can see each hole, that's a different house, but they're all attached. And they are actually built out of mud and, of course, dung. They actually make them out of poop. That is a true story. And they're actually built by the women. The men do the hunting. The women literally build the house. So we thought that was kind of a very interesting thought process. And around these, there was actually two different bushes that they had going all the way around for protection from lions at night, of thorns, different bushes that they had and they could find, and they set them up, and they would be like 6-7 feet tall, and it'd be in a giant circle all the way around all the houses. And then there was another one inside the houses, because all these houses are built in a circle around that. And then in that intersection would be where of an evening they would pull in all the cattle and all the sheep and anything like that. And so there would be multiple barrier walls between them. So Ash, if you want to go to the next one, this is the Maasai tribe that lives there. This is
Go ahead and play it while he's talking.
longer video that goes through, but what they ended up doing is they went through and did a welcome dance for us to make us feel a part and to be welcomed into their homes. The sticks that you see holding, those are all actually built. They make them themselves. That's one of the things, again, to become a man that they have to do. They said that it is a misconception that they are for war. A lot of people, you know, when you see them in movies, different things like that, those are clubs that people use to hit things. That is actually not what they're used for. It's literally a showing of peace. So they carry them around. They use them for almost everything. It's kind of like a little tool. The men, of course, are up front. You can hear them kind of singing and chanting. And then, of course, the women here in the back as well. But it goes on for about 3 or 4 minutes, but they all do continue to dance. They invited us in to be a part of it, which was amazing. We had a jumping competition. I lost terribly, but you know, I did try. So, you know, hey, it is what it is. So
The better the jump, the more likely you are to get a wife.
Yeah, I tried to hold back on purpose. That's what it was. No, you should see him jump. I mean, geez. But it was amazing. Like I said, Ash, that one will continue to run for a while if you want to skip to the next thing. But you kind of get a little bit of culture that they have in that. So we got our next picture. Did it freeze? Okay. So once again, they showed us how they end up going through and making fire, because everything is done old school. They don't have lighters, they don't have electricity, they don't have anything. Everything is done by water and fire and the elements. So they showed us how to do that. We did end up being able to go into the homes. So you can see here, we've got a fire pit and their cooking utensils. That's actually a shelf where they would store all of their cooking stuff. And that fire pit is literally where they would make their meals every evening. So here you can see us, we are actually sitting on one of the beds. There would be 2 of these in the house. One would be for all of the children, and then the other one is just for mom and dad. So, and this is something that I have got to share with you because it was amazing.
Play this one, Ashley. It's a video.
It's a very short video, but it's great. It's worth it.
Picture. I'm videoing.
And I want you to notice that this guy,
he just
stands right out. He's 6'6", he's taller than Dad. He just walked right out the hole.
Yeah.
But Dad was like, "Oh, of course you went out first so you could take a picture." And I was like, "I'm not taking a picture. I videoed this." And so this gentleman here actually followed us around for the next about hour and a half that we were there, and actually made fun of him for quite a while.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Not that Samuel enticed that in.
No, I did. I did.
Yeah.
It was great. Next, so I wanted that video though so that everybody else could see the joys.
As we were traveling back, I had noticed as we were traveling out to the safari, I noticed towns like this along the way, just little areas here and there where people would gather for shopping and stuff like that. And I felt like you needed to be aware of what we were seeing there. You know, as you can tell, there's not much to it. But this place, of course, here is over here where they would buy vegetables and food and stuff like that. And then this over here with the green doors, that's a hotel. Y'all want to go stay the night?
Now, one of the things that Dad didn't quite catch yet is this was actually the same town. It was as we were going through on the highway, on one side of town was an entire tribe, an entire village of people, and on the right side of the highway was another. The road right down the middle literally split the two different tribes. And so what they would end up doing is literally, it was not uncommon as you're driving through town, speed bumps are a thing. If they don't fix the potholes, they add speed bumps. That way, no matter where you're driving, you're doing this the whole time. So they would actually slow you down anytime you came into a town like this, and they would literally walk up to the windows with fruit and water.
Yep.
And you would literally just reach out, hand them change, they'd hand stuff straight in the window.
This particular area was kind of fascinating, and there's several hundred square miles that has been bought by the government, and this building that you see going up here is the beginning of an infrastructure for a whole new city. As Samuel said a while ago, one of the things that Nairobi is facing is that there's 4-point-something million people living there with an infrastructure that was originally intended for only 1 million people. So the president of Kenya and several investors, foreign investors as well, are actually in the process of building a city that'll have the infrastructure to be able to hold a city of 2.5 million people at the very beginning. And so they're starting, and this is the very beginning point of this building that we see right here. It's just out there in the middle of nowhere. We're just driving along. We haven't seen anything for 30 miles.
And a bunch of roads.
Sudden, boom.
There's all this fencing and then just a bunch of roads. Because they've already ran the plumbing, they've already ran most of the electric, and they'd ran most of the streets already. But there's no buildings yet, besides this one. So it was weird to kind of look out there and just see.
And so I'm curious, what is this, you know? And that's what the driver said, is they're building it with the infrastructure in place for 2.5 million people. That way people from the coast that want to move inland have a place to move to. And then Nairobi is more in the middle of the country. And if people from there would like to migrate over, it would be, you would end up being halfway in between the two by having this particular area. So go ahead. Because if you see here, it's kind of hard to tell for sure in this picture, but in this particular structure, this is back in Kenya. There are people living in that building and it's not even finished.
And a lot of them, if they were built up, they were even leaning.
Yep.
It was not uncommon to see these multi-story buildings leaning.
Good.
Ash. So, of course, here's where we spent a lot of time. This is the lunch hall. So, you know, a lot of good food there, which we're going to share with you guys here in just a couple of minutes. Really good time of fellowship with different people. And of course, we recognize this guy standing at the post, leading everything, Mr. Rob North himself. So, Ash, our next one. We did spend a lot of time every evening. We did have a worship time. All 4 of these guitars we took with us as carry-ons, and then we left there when we departed. We were giving instruments that they were not able to bring in themselves. They said that the issue that they tend to have there is that anything like this is made in a different country, and the tariff to get it in is going to cost them 5 or 6 times more than what the actual item itself could possibly cost. So a lot of them, they were talking about the idea. I had somebody asking me about my iPhone, which I thought was interesting, and I was like, what's the question about it? And he goes, well, you know, he goes, to be honest, that's probably about a $1,500 to $1,600 US cell phone because of the tariffs that it takes to get it through the country. So they were talking about the idea of how much all these things can cost. And so it was amazing to be able to leave these. We actually left one with the gentleman who cleaned our room. He was actually a pastor, and he was actually able to take one back to play for his church so that they could have a worship set with an instrument. This, of course, was one of the weirdest places that we went. It was amazing. We went down roads, once again, that I did not know how the bus made it, but it was a lot of fun. This is actually Kinsengala glass, right? I don't know if you remember Rob North talking about it, but up here, these are the elephant that you see here with the mirror in it, and then also the giraffe down here at the bottom. It was one of the weirdest locations we have ever gone. Everything was very eccentric, very beautiful, but all of this stuff is recycled glass, it's handmade, and all of it, it was very, I don't know how to explain it, because we went into a location that the floor was like cattle fencing, okay? And I'm talking like holes, like this, cattle fencing. And then there was carpet laid over the top. And that was for the second story.
Yeah.
The first story was dirt. The second story, I went through and I went, does anybody else feel that bounce? Is it just me? No, yeah, we all felt it. This was actually great.
For those of us of a little bit more weight, we went one at a time.
We did. Then they actually had a beautiful place that there was glass all laid into the ground, and bridges that they had hand built and made with glass, which should be the next photo. We actually paid to go across this swinging bridge. It has a bunch of their glass on it as well. It was probably every bit of about 70 feet to the bottom of the gorge. We walked across this. It's made out of that same idea, that cattle fencing, but this time around no carpet. And as far as the sidewalls go, you see the wires going down. There is nothing on the sides. It's literally the only, I know you can't really tell because of the way the photo is taken, but there is only that cattle guarding on the bottom. The sides are, 2 to 3 feet apart and they're wide open. And so we had a blast going across that. For some reason, we could not get some people to go across it. I don't know why. They were terrified.
Yeah.
It was great. Ashley wouldn't have made it.
No.
But love you, sis. But that was a lot of fun as well. We took a lot of good photos there. Our next one, Ash.
This is our group. This is a group that went from Northeast Texas. And so just every mission group that comes to ANU, they put together a plaque like this. and out in the main area, they have, I don't know how to explain it, but they just have these concrete bars, I guess is a way to say it, that's set out there that just kind of jet out, and on each of those they have different groups and the names of everybody within that group. And so really it's really a very special time for us to be able to see that, hey, you know, we are a part of being a difference here. And what was kind of interesting for us as well is going back and looking at some of the other groups that have been there before and be able to say, hey, I know that person.
Yeah.
Oh, and I know that person, you know. And so it was pretty cool to be able to see that. And then here I am talking to my two sons.
Like you said, his favorite one, and then me.
Yeah.
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 So, okay, I hadn't forgot either. No, spending the time with Sean was absolutely amazing. His wife was actually where Rob's wife is the one who does all of the preaching in chapel. Sean's wife does all the music, and so we got to spend a lot of time with those two families due to setting up the sound system. Sean, as you heard him talk a little bit in that intro video that I didn't know was coming, which, like you said, it took me a second to kind of get back, but he is actually in charge of the entire continent of Africa's NYI, and he's a young man that has a passion and a fire for God.
Yes.
And was a blessing beyond belief. And you know, he constantly would joke with us, giving us a hard time. You know, he agreed with me that Dad is really, really old, and so we found that funny for most of it. We spent so many evenings and lunches and, you know, anytime we could over 2 weeks. And I don't know, it's just a good man, you know.
Yeah.
And I mean, it got to the point that literally by the time we left, all three of us were actually crying. You know, it just because of the bonds that we made, we know aren't going to end just because the trip is over. You know, and I still pray for him and for ANU and for our youth of Africa every day because of meeting that man there and knowing the fire and passion that this man has for Jesus Christ. So, what's our next one, Ash?
That's it.
That's it. So, but
I'm going to take just a moment here, though, and as I pray this morning, I hope you don't mind that I pray for ANU at the same time. And for those there, I will take the opportunity to pray for our meal. I will tell you, we did take it easy on you. You will have rice and beans, and you're going to have beans and rice. But that we found to be a state. I think probably the most shocking thing when it comes to that is that for breakfast, the very first morning we get there, they bring out these trays like your cafeteria style, you know. Mm-hmm. They bring out these trays, they take the aluminum foil off these trays, and for breakfast,
there's beans and rice.
Can somebody say amen?
Then rice and beans.
Let's pray. Thank you, Heavenly Father, for this day. It seems like it's been a long time coming to be able to share this, and well, as we look at the clock, we probably could have shared it over 2 different services, but you know, it was a reminder for us, and I trust that it was also helpful for the people to recognize the importance of this trip was for us. It wasn't just about going over there and seeing the things and seeing the sights that we've never seen before, even though, man, that was really cool, God, and thank you for your creation and the things that you created, but more importantly, it was the relationships that we built. And so we know, Heavenly Father, from still being in contact with people from ANU, that they're struggling. They're going through a hard time. Enrollment's been down, and they're still struggling with trying to get all the technology stuff worked out. And so we just ask, Heavenly Father, that you would bless this university and that you would continue to use people like Sean and others to be able to continue to build your kingdom, especially there through ANU and then also through the NYI and the throughout the continent of Africa. But Heavenly Father, we ask that you would be with us as we go to this meal too, and that you would just bless this time and anoint this time together as we fellowship with one another. We do thank you for all that you do for us. We thank you for what you're going to do. And just continue to help us to become more like your Son Jesus in everything we say and do. For we ask this in the precious name of Jesus. Amen. Amen. Well, I think our intent is, so if you'll give us just a few moments, our intent is that we are going to serve you. You'll take a plate. That's what they did to us. We actually took a plate over, held it out in front and said yes or no to whether we wanted it. And so they would actually serve us. The cool thing about the people in Africa that I felt like was that they were servant-oriented people. They loved to serve. And so let's gather together. I also do, before you leave here today, I do have a free gift for everybody. Picked up some keychains from Africa Nazarene University. I want to make sure that everybody gets one, okay? All right. Well, thank you all very much.